And Dave, one thing that I've always loved about you is you're not shy at publishing your numbers and you put them out there on LinkedIn for everyone to see, good, bad, and the ugly every quarter. What gives you the confidence to go out and live that transparency globally?
Well, nobody puts their numbers out probably because their numbers aren't as good as our numbers, but I guess it is honesty and transparency. But, part of it is telling the story of WorkWave. A lot of people still think of it as this small little pest control oriented, I always say sleepy beach company, and it's changed quite considerably. It is important that we tell the story of what the company is, what the performance is, how we are scaling and growing and managing successfully. And all joking aside, the performance across the past 5 years has been very, very good. So you can't help but feel good about sharing your numbers. And I think they'll continue. We're on a very good trajectory. We've had the best year of software growth that WorkWave's had in the past. And some of that is the fact that we managed well during the good times. And we looked at this as a long journey because our customers stay with us for decades. We need to be there 10 years from now for those same customers. We do it, we don't have to do it, but we're getting ready to release some new numbers soon.
That's great. Hey, David, great to have you on the show.
Hey, Ricky. Hey, Sean. Good to see you guys again.
Likewise. Mate, so let's get into it. Let's go back to your early days. What inspired you to get into tech and eventually led you to WorkWave?
I'm not sure it was so intentional. Sometimes I feel like I just wandered here by sheer luck. But when I was in middle school, I got out of the Sears catalog. I ordered what was called a VIC-20 at the time. It was a precursor to the Commodore 64. And I taught myself how to program basic, C++, that kind of thing. I could make little video games with guys running around. So I was very technology oriented at a very young age for no apparent reason. My family had nothing to do with technology. And that really, I think, made me technology friendly. So as I started my professional career, I was in operations, a very leadership management oriented start to my career. But I could look into the technology and understand it and wasn't scared of it in a way that my peer group was. Because my peer group was 10 to 15 years older than me. I was in leadership positions pretty young. And it gave me an advantage over them because I could analyze reports and information, data in a way that they couldn't. And eventually, just to expand my learning, I went into business consulting and started a practice that was about turning data into information and then creating management structure out of the information to drive business results using data-driven decision-making, which was buzzy at the time. And I had a consulting firm. A lot of people would know the Telos group. And eventually the world changed where the expectation from customers was that the software provider should also help them solve business problems. And the world was moving away from these big $1 million consulting engagements. So at that point, I sold my consulting firm, went over into the software space. By coincidence, 2 jobs later, ended up at a publicly traded field service software company. And I got recruited from that COO role in that public FSM software company to become the CEO of WorkWave on a personal recommendation. Just somebody in the industry said, you really need to talk to Dave. I think he's the right guy for that situation. And it's been a blessing ever since. It's been the greatest job of my career. I love WorkWave, the work we do. The employees are phenomenal. And the industries we work with are really cool too.
Exciting story, David. So maybe then lead us into WorkWave. You mentioned it's an exciting place to be. What's been your most rewarding moment to date at WorkWave?
I think most people in my life would probably say I'm a glass half empty kind of guy. I'm always thinking, God, I could have loaded that dishwasher in a more efficient way or something. So I have very few rewarding moments. But in 2021, as you guys both know, we made some very broad and meaningful acquisitions that really changed the entire landscape of commercial and residential field service management, really across the English-speaking world. And we were doing that all behind the scenes, very quietly. Across 6 months, we acquired, I think it was 7 companies in total. And it was all virtual because 2021 was still COVID. I didn't meet these people face to face. And it wasn't until WorkWave's first user conference post-COVID where we had a very large event. And it was the first time we could stand in one room and we could see Real Green and Team Software and WorkWave, the old WorkWave, Slingshot, Coal March, I don't want to forget anyone's service spot. We could see them all laid out in front of us for the first time. All the key leaders were there, that the customer bases were all merged into an event for the first time. And it was just that moment for me where it just like being punched in the face to say, wow, what this team accomplished over the course of 6 months really was very special and changing. And there probably will never be another time like that again for any of us in our careers. And that moment did feel good. I'll admit that. Yeah.
So if you're a glass half full kind of person, then I'll
As I
roll the other
mentioned.
side. Half empty, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll go the other side of the question then. So look, as a CEO that I worked with a little bit, who I looked up to, I think you're the finest CEO in field service software in the world.
Thank you.
And what's one of the most challenging situations you've come across in your career as a CEO?
John, you know this, it's all challenging, right? But
Think about, we're aiming at early stage people coming up, and some of these people every day, they sit there looking at the wall going, God, this is so hard. But part of our job is, it is hard, and it's getting through these challenges, which is our job. That's part of the rewarding part.
Yeah, it's awesomely challenging, right? It is the very best challenges you could ever face. It is a dream come true, but it is hard day in and day out. And I think that's what, to do big special things is very hard. That's why they don't happen every day. So we went through that big string of acquisitions. And I think the thing that was most challenging for us is that we did something very unusual. We only bought really good companies. We didn't run around cleaning up broken companies. We bought the best company in each category and merged together great companies. And that's very rarely done. And when you get a great company, you get companies with real cultures. And so you were taking the WorkWave culture with an equally strong team software culture, an equally strong Real Green culture. And then you have the smaller units, Colmar, Slingshot. So they all have their own culture, and you're trying to merge them in. And this always comes down to people. People build technology. People generate revenue. People convince other companies to buy software. It's only about people. And that's easy to lose sight of. And when you're trying to get people to come along, to become part of this bigger vision, and they didn't ask for it, right? The average person doesn't make the decision to sell the company. The owners do that, and then the employees have to come along. And to be fair, WorkWave employees didn't make that decision either. I did. The private equity group that own us decided to support that vision. So WorkWave wasn't asking for it either, and they had to come on this journey too. So I think in the midst of it all, the most challenging things were at the very human level of trying to get people to see the vision, to believe in it, to be part of it, to understand that things are fundamentally different. It's never going to go back. And connecting with them, despite the chaos that you're dealing with as a CEO, it is challenging. You have to make that extra effort to get out and about, to shake hands, to explain the vision over and over. And you won't win them all. And it's heartbreaking. And you'll mess up some stuff. Your people will make mistakes. You will handle transitions poorly and regret it. But you have to have a management team that generally wants to handle it right, and you'll get through it.
And I think if there's something you and I have always been super aligned of, is people is the most important thing in your business, right? That's where you spend your time. That's what you got to get out, meet your people, spend time with everyone, handshakes, get to know people as best you can. It's hard when you got 1,000 staff. Get around, spend time with people. It's the best use of your time as a CEO, right? Because if you get them all to believe in your vision, you'll be successful. But as you think about all those things and how hard it is, can you pinpoint a mistake you've made and what you did to recover from that? Because like I said, I truly believe you are the finest CEO right now in field service software. But even someone like you makes mistakes. Like it is part of our job, is that we try stuff, we push the envelope, and we're gonna
fuck
up. It happens.
Yeah, we don't talk about those a lot, especially
No, we
in
don't.
this PE-backed world. You keep the ship flying. When we acquired one of the companies, it was very different than us. One of the companies much smaller, so it had a much more entrepreneurial feel. They were doing things that you just couldn't do as a very large company, the way we are, the structure we have, the audits that we're under. And we had a huge transition to make their sales team. And they were doing all relationship selling. They didn't have a sales machine. Now they should have built it, right? But they didn't. And we were certainly slow to recognize that it was so relationship dependent. And when there was only a couple of people in sales, when they got a bit disillusioned and disconnected because they didn't want to work in this new structure. They didn't want the massive windfalls that they were being paid in that entrepreneurial environment. We're very much a culture of everyone's equal. Like even I myself, there's not a lot of privilege to the position. That doesn't mean that I don't do and get things that other people don't, but we are all generally treated the same and everyone treats each other the same. We just have different jobs and different titles and different responsibilities, even myself. And not everyone wants to be in that environment. And I think when I look back, we were slow to recognize that there was a little bit of quiet quitting going on. And that was a very foreign thing to WorkWave. That never happened in the old WorkWave. People were committed. And if you weren't committed, it was very obvious and you got off the bus. You self-selected out. And when you start to mix with other cultures, that wasn't happening. And we were slow to realize it. And the problem with that is post-acquisition, when you buy a good company, it needs to keep going, right? You need to make it do even better. And if you lose focus on the sales effort, now you have a valley, you have a gully that you have to get through. And now when revenue's not flowing, everything's more scrutinized. People don't feel as good. They feel like they're failing. Now you're like climbing back up the hill. And we're good at recovering from mistakes once we focus on them. But if I was going back, I would have recognized that right away, the importance of that.
Hey, David, so you mentioned that you did 7 in a very quick succession in terms of M&A. Did you ever feel like you lost out on one or two that you really wanted to get? And what were the reasons behind it?
I do. You guys more than anyone know I do feel that way. There's 2 waves. When we made the decision and laid out the strategy for 2021 at the end of 2020, and we knew other people wanted Real Green and Team Software because they're great companies. But they really weren't for sale. And as you guys know, there are moments at times when things are for sale and you go through process and do all that. And this wasn't that. This was me reaching out, painting a vision and seeing if they would buy in and come along. And they did. And that's how we did it. So in that first wave of the acquisitions that we wanted, we got what we wanted. And that's what made it so transcendent to do what we did. But then after that, everyone was wise to the fact that this sleepy beach company WorkWave had woken up and wasn't going to sit in the background anymore. And people started reacting. And I think some of the best moves we made as a company and as a management team was to put our competitors at a real disadvantage because we were so far ahead of them. They were reacting to us and they were making bad decisions and spending bad money. And that has really come back to haunt our competitors. WorkWave probably hurt them more through that, but by the good decisions we were making and taking control of our destiny. And now you see how they couldn't. But post that, everyone was a little bit more savvy that WorkWave was in the game and deals get done because people connect. And when we have not connected the right way with the ownership of the companies we wanted, the deals don't get done. It is much more driven by people connecting and being pragmatic about getting a deal done because it's not all black and white, right? There's sellers and there's buyers, and that alone makes it hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't say which ones, but yeah, we still have hope. We still have plans. The game never ends.
Being CEO at the time when all this was happening, I do remember the post acquisition boom that occurred after you guys snapped up stuff. And I was looking at a whole bunch of stuff that came up and I was the quiet quitter. I tapped out of a lot of them. It just was too high. Post that run, what demands companies were getting that really weren't top-notch quality assets were unbelievable. From my perspective, I just walked away from a whole bunch of deals because my view of the world was there were harder times coming, which I think we've all gone through over the last year and a half, 2 years as you went post-COVID. Construction is the first hit. Always the first hit is field service, right? We copped the first hit. And so I was very disciplined. And I think that's something that you've done really well is not only did you acquire 7 companies and grow rapidly, but you remained financially disciplined the whole time you did it, which I think is a huge credit.
Yeah, we've always believed in sound financial management. It's been the cornerstone of what we've done at WorkWave. Profitable growth has always been in our DNA. So when the big change in the world happened, it didn't really affect us because we always had a profitable growth or orientation. And to be fair, our ownership has a big hand to play in that because we are owned by very serious professional private equity groups. You cannot beat EQT and HG, and to be backed up with TA and Cerent. These are top-notch private equity groups. So they are not going to let us make crazy decisions. And not every acquisition goes to plan, but the thinking is fundamentally sound because you have a lot of people in the room. I might be the one raising my hand and saying, yes, this is what we should do. This is the vision. But there's an awful lot of vetting that goes into it. People mistakenly think that you can add two mediocre companies together and get a great company. That very rarely happens. Usually it becomes one big bad mess. And you can have a great company acquire something with a good strategy as long as the management team is very true. And with all of our acquisitions, we knew what we wanted to become. We were not being opportunistic. We were creating what we believed was the best version of WorkWave.
Shifting gears here a little bit, David. So as a leader, you're only as good as the team that sits behind you. You have an amazing team. Can you tell us a little bit more about what qualities you look into certain individuals when you bring them into the leadership team, and what do you prioritize the most?
Yeah, I'm blessed. My whole career, I was a loner because I was going into companies, fixing them, getting them back on track. I was that change agent, and being a change agent is a very lonely job because nobody really wants you there. Eventually you build a core of people around you and you start to get camaraderie. But I had always said, I want to work in a company where everyone at the table is the best at what they do. And I bring what I bring, and together we take it to the next level. And that's really what I found at WorkWave. And I'll tell you, the core of that executive team is still there. We're all still together. And that longevity has been very helpful because we know each other, good and bad. So I'm first probably looking at fit. When we bring somebody new in, we just hired a new COO, a very talented guy. We hired our CRO 2 years ago, really a big impact on the company. First and foremost, it was, will they fit culturally with the team that we have? Can they fit, and can they take it to the next level? And the biggest difference in the team's mentality and the culture of that executive group is that when a problem is raised or an opportunity is put in front of them, or let's say I have a crazy idea and I walk in the next day and I put it on the table, I've never been around a group of people that is so forward facing. They just are starting to talk about very quickly. They're on board and they're talking about what the roadblocks could be, the challenges, the impact. They embrace change. They're not scared of it. And they don't dwell on the past. They don't play any games. I probably am not articulating it well, but when you're around a team, their first thought is, let's go get it. And it doesn't matter if we have to readjust and cut costs, or if we have to go acquire a bunch of companies, or if we're going to do something that we've never done before. They want to go get it. And that is very different than dragging your executive team along. You can't, not at scale, right? We're going to close.
Yeah.
I took over 5 years ago. We were 50 million. We'll close this year, 5 years later, at 500 million. Just about, a little short. You can't drag people on that journey. They got to want to go.
That's so true.
100%.
Right. And you brought a winning culture a couple of times during the M&A piece, also about the leaders. What are the key elements of such a culture, David, that contributes to overall organization success? What do you put it down to? Because it's not those big billboards or the posters or the stickers that go up on the wall. That's not what defines a culture. What is culture to you, and how do you portray that at WorkWave?
I don't think you can get around the fact that the CEO does set the culture, because if you say one thing and do another, they see your actions, right? They do live with you and get to know you. So you do have to be authentic in what you're doing. I've always been maybe too transparent, too open about things. That's in many of the environments I've worked in, that's not been a good thing. Especially when you're a change agent, right? Sometimes you can't make payroll on Friday, and it's very tough to keep your mouth shut because you want to be honest with everyone, but you can't. But in WorkWave, it was really a blessing for me because it was the first time in my career where I was able to be completely open and honest and transparent, right? I was being a much more authentic me, the me that I always wanted to be if I was a CEO, because this is the real first big CEO gig for me. And that's what I believed in. So to be able to just be more myself, it's a lot easier to manage because you're not ever worried.
Yeah.
You know,
You have to put a show on, right? You just be you.
yeah, to be fair, when I have to put on a show, there's other times I'm not as social, maybe as some of the employees wish. I'm not the guy who walks into a room and like the whole room is like, oh, I'm not the
Yeah.
life of the party. That's not me. I have to push myself. The employees got to know that over time too. And I guess they're okay with it.
You're right. The CEO sets the culture, but if you can be true to who you are in all of those aspects, and yeah, there's heaps of times where we want to be more transparent than we can be. It's part of the gig. Is sometimes you have to be a little bit more careful about something that's confidential. You've got legal contracts that says you can't talk about it, but we always drove a very similar culture of open and transparent. And I love nothing more than having 100 people, 1,000 people meetings and you open the floor and people bombard you for 10 minutes about what you're doing wrong. Like that stuff that generates discussions and allows you to grow as a leader and the business to grow. Like I found that stuff powerful. I know others found it uncomfortable, but for me, it was like, cool. If they're that passionate about this, we should be looking at it, because if one person's saying it, there's a fair chance there's an undercurrent of other people who also feel very similar. For me, I always felt open, transparent cultures allow you to be a better leader, because then you can actually make meaningful changes that make your workforce happy.
Yeah.
And happy
But it's
people
not
work
easy.
better. It's not easy.
It's not easy because there are times when you have to deliver bad news, you make mistakes. And I'm talking about transparency to the customer base too. And I'll tell you that the WorkWave folks were very nervous when they would see me go into meetings and talk to customers and putting it out there. And we're just going to tell the customers what we will do and what we won't do and why, and explain that we're running a business and this is better for them in the long term, right? Having a good, strong, healthy, stable WorkWave, because we are the hands down industry leader in every industry that is our main focus. We're talking 65 to 75% market share. What we do sets the tone for these industries. And if we are not strong in carrying them forward, then those industries are going to struggle. So it's in everyone's best interest that WorkWave remains strong and healthy and stable.
David, to that point though, can one sometimes be rather too authentic and actually hurt the performance of the organization? You were quick to answer yes. So has there been a moment where you've just regretted it instantly, or you've reflected on it to go, oh, perhaps shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, 100%. I can look back at my career and shake my head at things I've said and that I shouldn't have said. I forget the year now, but I was a business consultant at a super regional, so a very white collar, old school, stuffy, partner oriented environment. And I ran my own practice, and I was the only non-partner with my own P&L. And so therefore, in that type of environment, the other partners are not really investing in your practice. And I was selling to Fortune 1000 companies. My customer base was awesome. The United Nations, Fujifilm, Stanley Black & Decker, JP Morgan. These were mega companies in that world. So I would be selling, doing the work, and then the sales would drop. So it was this constant wave of pressure. I was traveling 48 weeks a year. I was having the time of my life, but it was brutal. And I remember being in the meeting about staffing my practice up. And it was just one of those really nice moments where everyone's supposed to just shake hands and leave the room happily. And I have the managing partner of the firm, the managing partner of the consulting group. They're like, okay, you're on board, Dave, right? We're going to get you that staff. And I still remember the words. I still remember sitting there saying to myself, don't say it. Don't say it. And I said it. And I said, this is great, but it's not ever going to actually happen because you keep telling me that. And then he keeps going and doing the opposite. He's not being honest. Why are we kidding each other? And boy, you just don't say that to two managing partners in a consulting accounting firm. And my time there was over from that sense. And I look back so many times, and that is the moment where I grew up. And I said to myself, the world is not black and white. Because I was raised professionally and personally and through the military, all those things with a kind of an overly developed sense of right and wrong. And that doesn't fly in businesses where you operate in the gray.
Lesson learned the hard way. I would want to shift again and talk about scaling. You mentioned you've gone from 50 to 500 million in 5 years. So congratulations to you and the team. Tell us a bit more, like what were some of the challenges? Obviously navigating COVID and M&A we've spoken about, but what were some of the other challenges going rapidly?
I think the challenge is that you're doing it with a management team that's never done it before. and you're constantly running up against obstacles that you're in some way solving for the first time, because you go to war with the team you have, not the team you wish you had. That's just the nature of the business. And as talented as they are, and as talented as I might be, if you haven't solved a problem before, you're more likely to make mistakes, right? Everyone will say to me, because I work in a private equity backed CEO role, how is it that these guys go out and they lose hundreds of millions of dollars? They're embarrassed. Netflix is doing a special on how horrible they are. And 3 months later, they've got another CEO gig with people piling money in. And I say, it's because at least that person knows what they failed at. They solved the problem wrong, and they're less likely to make that mistake again. So you have to have that. You have to be very aware of that. And I think the trick for us has been, when people opted out or when we had to move on from someone, we upgraded the talent. And as we've gotten bigger, we have gravitated more towards people that have done it before. So our CRO is no joke. Our COO is no joke, right? These people we've added bring experience with them, and they bring everyone else up with them. And you just can't underestimate that covering new ground for the first time is harder. And when we became the first payment facilitator in the fall of 2019, nobody had ever done it before. We were the first. That was new ground that we were going to cover, no matter how many years of experience behind us. It's just harder. And if you're more conscious, you can build a team that's sensitive to that. You just can't kid yourself. That isn't an obstacle. You'd have the best people in the world, super talented, awesome. And we did. But you're a little bit better off if you've got people that have been through this before.
But you got to find that balance, right? You need the balance of people who've actually been riding the way with you, and you need the ones, as you said, who've done it before. So how do you navigate that? Because that's a complex equation to resolve, especially when you got a bunch of execs who are really bleeding WorkWave.
Yeah, they are. I think it goes back to the culture. You're either a fit or you're not, because you can go get a very senior person. Look, they're at a different stage of their career. They've done it. They might have made their money. It'd be easy to say, they're not going to be as hungry as they should be, right? So you've got to get that person that is just as excited to take this company on the journey, even though you might initially say, we don't want this person in this box, because that person is not going to be willing to kill themselves in the same way that I am, or somebody that's building their career 10 years younger than me is. So you got to find that needle in the haystack of experience, but still hungry, still excited, still motivated. And these senior jobs, they can wear on you. So a lot of folks do get tired towards the end of their career. You don't think that's a factor, but it is.
Yeah.
You just got to be you got to remain true to what's the criteria of success and not let yourself get pulled off of it.
Well said. And what about you, David? Like, how has your leadership style evolved as you've taken the team who were on this path with you, who perhaps had not done it, and now you're bringing in people who have gone and done it before? So have you had to change your style and how you lead these people versus how you led the other team?
I think there's a size at which the CEO can manage everything in the company. Like at 50 million, you can keep almost all the company in your head. All the people, all the dynamics, all the initiatives, all the tech, all the debt. You can just manage that, just see it in your head and manage through it. And it's not that hard. When you start scaling, especially very rapidly, you can't. And your leadership style has to completely flex to trusting other people to represent you, make decisions, have good radar. Because at a certain size, think of a big company, a vice president is equal to a CEO. If you're a $2 billion company, that VP is running a group that's $50, $100, $200 million on their own. So you have to go through this inflection point where you start to back away from making every decision, trusting people a lot more. You need to have a much better infrastructure in place in the company to see and understand what's happening, how revenue and expense is flowing. You need a really top-notch financial team, which we've always been blessed to have. And you need good mentoring. I have a lot of people around me. Don't forget, I'm not on my own. I have a coach who is a mentor to me, who I can be completely and 100% open and honest with, that will help me. I have the chairman of the board, Darren Roos, a CEO in his own right, who's been down this journey before. I've got all the folks from the private equity groups weighing in. So it is a team.
I want to touch on metrics a little bit, Dave. When you're at 50 million and when you then get to 200, then 400 and 500, what are you tracking? Because there's so much information that surely is coming your way. But is there number one metrics you look at different stages of the growth of the business, or do you just look at the whole dashboard? What type of a guy are you?
I come from a background of 10 years of intense business intelligence and analytics work, combining financial data, operational data. We were the first firm to add big data, social data into operational financial data. I come from a very data information hungry background. And if anything at WorkWave, we have too much information, which is a very common problem. But I will say at the end of the day, not just for WorkWave, but for any company, you have to look at the ownership structure. Who owns the company and what are their goals? Because I serve at the pleasure of the board and I have to know what the thinking is about WorkWave and where they're trying to go, what they're trying to do, because that's the way I win support is by understanding and executing, but also bringing back what may or may not be a good or bad idea and being a good equal partner, voice at the table. So you've got to look at the metrics that matter to the people around you. If you're a publicly traded company, those are different ones. And if you're PE backed, VC backed, private, so you got to look at that first and foremost. So it's always going to boil down to revenue growth and EBITDA or profitability, because those are just the bellwether metrics that we all live by, because it's about valuation in this world where Sean worked and you guys and myself. But once you get under that, if you have a really good information structure, you're looking at operational drivers that yield you the results. You might think of bookings translates to revenue, right? That's a very simple concept, but it does in a software world, it doesn't turn into revenue until you go live. So now you're looking at the funnel leading up to go live. And now you're mapping out for very large companies that have multiple brands. How are you navigating getting those brands to sign contracts, which is bookings? How are you getting them in the pipeline, which is a transition for potential revenue? And then how's the operational team, service support, implementation, running that pipeline to maximize the actual achievement of revenue? Because we're SaaS, right? So every month you're running for the finish line, and something in January is 12 times more valuable than December. Yeah, I don't know. Leading operational metrics. If you can get them, you can perform a lot better.
Nice. Nicely put. David, coming back to WorkWave, you've reached $500 million milestone. What's next? What are you most excited about? Where's the business heading? What's the next phase look like?
World dominance, right? Now, look, we are very opportunistic now because that's the phase that the world is in. You're starting to see companies crack, and some good companies are finding themselves in a need to sell. So you're going to see much more activity over the next 6 months. So I think we have an ownership group that's very acquisitive and looking for that constantly. We have a very active team. I think we have a good acquisition track record at WorkWave in the market. So we're often the very first phone call from the CEO or from the bankers to say, do you think we could talk about WorkWave, bringing this company into the family? And we love those conversations, but we need to be very smart about it. And we have a lot of work to do. We have teams across the US. We have our team in London. We have a team in Italy. We have a team in Melbourne, Australia. So we are making sure that those regional orientations are strong and stable and looking for opportunities in those regions as well. And we're really in a phase of internationalization of the technology too. So PestPac has 75% of the North American market. Imagine when we release that into the UK and into Australia next year, we can do great things there too. So we are in some ways staying true to the principles and the pillars that the company's built on, but our reach is much further than it used to be. And we're just going to stay steady and a bit conservative. Because let's remember, we're not out of COVID yet. We're not out of the recession yet. We're not out of the war in Europe yet. And in fact, the war in Europe is heating up with the very recent events. Almost all of the industries are actually declining in growth. It doesn't mean they're not growing, but they're not growing like they were. We have to be very sensitive to that. And The companies that do best during downturns like right now are the companies that manage the best during the uptimes. And in the US, we were up for what, a decade, right? There's large portions of the workforce that have never seen a downturn. And you talk about honesty and transparency. You have to educate your employees on what hard times look like and feel like, because they're not used to the cost of housing outpacing the growth of their income. So there's a lot that you have to address if you're going to have an open, honest, transparent culture. And it's not all fun, but you have to tell them that the reason we're doing this is because if you always manage in a financially sound manner, you protect the company and the customers and the employees and the shareholders.
Yeah. Excited for the next steps. We'll keep an eye out. Now the easy stuff is out of the way, David, we'll take you to a quick fire round. This is where the magic happens.
This is the fun part.
When you say it with that accent, it sounds fun.
Favorite sports team?
Favorite sports, ice hockey. So I'm going to go Philadelphia Flyers, but the Philadelphia Phillies are in the playoffs right now. Let's go game 3. And Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, yeah. How are they doing?
How are they doing? Oh, come on. Even down there, you must know the Philadelphia Eagles are doing bang up. They're 5-0.
Oh, look, Sean's got his hat on.
Oh, there you go. Look. Eagle.
Different kind of eagle. That's much like my dad is a wildlife artist, and that looks like a hawk to me, to be honest.
It's definitely an eagle.
It's a West Coast eagle.
It's a West Coast eagle. Yeah.
A West Coast eagle. All right.
That's right. Yeah.
Australian eagle.
Big John Australian eagle.
Favorite music genre, David? What are you listening to in the weekend?
I admittedly am a child of the new wave, so I'm mostly bands like Duran, Tears for Fears.
Oh, yeah.
Little Depeche, not as much. I was not an American guitar guy growing up, so very British influence. Actually, one of my overall favorite artists would probably be Neil Finn, which is the great export of music. Yeah, probably my number one favorite. Yeah,
there you have it. His music studio is actually not too far from me.
I get to Auckland, have to take me by.
That's it. We'll get over there. And then what about favorite drink, David? What do you lean towards?
I'm getting older, so I'm going with the clean alcohol these days. So we're either gin or vodka. Once you get old enough, you got to go with clear liquor.
Yeah. You're just going to have more.
Vodka soda.
Vodka soda.
Yeah. You guys are not there yet. I've been out for drinks with you guys. You are not at that stage yet.
Yeah, getting closer. Favorite place to visit, David? Have you been to one that you want to get back to, or is there one on your bucket list that you haven't been to?
My 2 favorite cities in the world would be Sydney and Venice. I think they're 2 cities unlike any of the other cities in the world. Yeah.
Interesting. Sean's a bit bummed out.
I'll take you to Brisbane. Way better than Sydney.
I've never been there. I've never been there yet. So.
Yeah.
And I will tell everyone, Australia is as special as every American thinks it is.
So, hey, look, mate, I can't disagree.
Yeah.
Got my vote.
Iceland is amazing too.
Iceland is amazing, yeah. We saw the pictures. One of the other guests, he went there, and it was
just looked phenomenal.
I don't know about going down those caves, though.
No, it's too scary for me.
Yeah. And the last and the most important question, David, this is what the podcast is all based around. You cannot get this wrong, so the pressure is on you. Peanut butter, how do you like it? Crunchy or smooth?
Like I said, I'm old. I don't eat peanut butter anymore. It's too many calories, but I'm too vain for that. But smooth, definitely. I don't know what it is about.
You definitely got it wrong.
It's been a long time since I had crunchy peanut butter. Long time.
Yeah. I feel like I complimented you by saying you're the best CEO in field service, and then you slapped me in the face by saying you like smooth peanut butter. It's just...
I support your right to whatever peanut butter you want.
So good. When you finally watch this one day, you will see at the end, you'll be like, we'll ask this question, and you'll be like, crunchy peanut butter. But it'll just sound Australian for some unknown reason. All of our guests say crunchy peanut butter.
Guys, one of my favorite shows to watch on YouTube is Bondi Beach Rescue. So
really?
I'm with you. I don't feel so good about my physique when I look at those guys, but they are. It's awesome.
Yeah. I'd like to pretend that all Australians have a physique like that, but I clearly do not.
It could be the choice of drink, Sean.
It possibly could. They definitely have something to do with it.
This has been a blast, David. Thanks for coming on and sharing all your insights.
Yeah. Always good to see you guys. Keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it.